I got a bit of a surprise. I've got an 890 adventure bike to ride as a test ride because I'm still waiting for the technical inspection on my bike, which is sitting over there. Now I get to ride this one here. Never have. I was curious about riding one of these, and today's the day. What's up, my biker friends, and welcome back to another video. I just took my bike to the shop. The guy isn't there that we need, so I have a little bit of time to kill. So I gave me a KTM 890 Adventure to ride for a couple hours. So I'm going to take you along for the ride to tell you what it feels like coming from a 1290 Super Adventure S and R model to one of these mid-size bikes. This is the first time I'm riding the mid-class adventure bikes that KTM makes, so I'm quite curious to see what it feels like to ride one of these, so stay tuned. Alright guys, let's check it out. First time riding a mid-size KTM adventure bike. This is the 890 Adventure. They also make an R model of this, which I think comes with different suspension. And I have no idea about the specs, to be honest. I think it has somewhere in the vicinity of 100 horsepower, but I have no clue what it is. This is just going to be street riding test and just, yeah, give you my immediate sort of reactions on what it feels like to ride the bike. And of course it feels much, much lighter than mine. And the display is so tiny. It's almost borderline too small, I have to say. I'm gonna play with the settings later, but I'm just gonna get warmed up. I don't even know where I'm going, to be honest, because I wasn't counting on actually taking the bike out and ride it around for a little bit. But now that I have the opportunity, might as well do it, right? Of course, it's funny to sit on something smaller now. If you're used to these large bikes, it feels really light and nimble. Also, I have no clue where I actually am, so I'm just gonna take a left here and see where it takes me. It feels quite powerful. I'm really surprised. I wasn't expecting that. Now the seat is pretty hard. It's wide enough. You know, to probably sit there for a while, sort of comfortably, but. It's kind of a hard seat. I think it's too hard for me. I think I'll go with something from the power parts. Get something that's a bit softer than this. If you do long distance travel on this one, this may get a bit too uncomfortable after a while. But it does feel quite powerful, especially even coming from a 1290. I thought it would be a lot less powerful from how it feels to ride a bike, but I'm pleasantly surprised, I have to say. It's quite good. It's like a bicycle to me now compared to, to the big bike. Wow, but that's a good thing. Also, it feels like it's sort of sitting on top of the bike. You know, that's people that come from, let's say, a 1250 GS and they sit on a KTM 1290. They kind of say that. They kind of say that they sit on top of the bike. This is even more pronounced because, you know, the tank is so much lower and you sit up here. Also, the windscreen seems low at the moment. I don't know how to adjust this one. I gotta find out how to adjust it. So you sit sort of on top of the bike, and rather than sitting in it, at least compared to the 1290. So in that sense, also it feels like a bicycle. There's just less motorcycle underneath you, just visually as well. Also, the clutch is a mechanical clutch. It's not hydraulic. Well, it's not a hydraulic clutch. It has still a cable in there, and but it's smooth. It's very easy, light. Brakes are pretty good too. I mean, this is a brand new bike, so I gotta take it a bit easy here with this one. Wow, it's like passive power. I'm really surprised. I didn't think it would be so nice, actually. Yeah, wow. really good. Really good. So it does have enough power. It's not like it's lacking in power. Pretty good. Pretty good. These streets. I don't know what happens with the mirror. It's just kind of readjusting itself. The mirrors are ugly as hell, I have to say. What is this plastic thing? Oh, Jesus, man. Also, of course, the controls, they feel really big, you know, on this small sort of handlebar. If you're used to it, you know, and it's funny. Yeah, I'm gonna pull over pretty soon and have a little walk around to see what the bike looks like. Alrighty, guys, I just got off the bike. I'm kind of off the beaten path here. Just pull over to the side a little bit just to kind of take a look at the bike and the stuff that I noticed just looking at it. It's interesting to see that we actually have a large front wheel. So we've got 21-inch front wheels on here, and I assume that's an 18 in the rear. And it's not just the R model. I know there's this model and the R model, but it seems both have the same wheel diameters on the bikes. It's interesting to know. So I didn't go with smaller wheels on the whatever version this is. I don't think it's considered a street version. It's just the Adventure and then the Adventure R, the R. I do know the R has a different suspension system in there that has more manual adjustments. Here you can't really change a whole lot on the suspension. Looks like you can change this preload on here, but there isn't much of changes that you can make. I know that, and it also is quite a bit higher off the ground when you sit on it. This one isn't, so interesting to see. Also, it's pretty obvious here with the tank design, split tank design. Again, this is an orange model. Yeah, I know there's split opinions on if this bike is actually looking good or not. I don't think it's the prettiest of the bunch. It sure rides nice, that's for sure. That was really good. I was impressed by the power that the bike has. I thought it would be a lot less from such a small engine, but it's not the case. I mean, it's a much lighter bike and it's around 100 horsepower, and just riding it on a regular road, it has plenty of power to pass cars, and that's really, really cool. And you know, you can upgrade some of the stuff just with graphics kits and things like that. You can certainly improve the looks of it, so that wouldn't be a big deal. But it looks also, from its appearance, it's so much smaller in every respect than the 1290. You know, it's so the exhaust can, the motor in itself, the rear swing arm, everything is just downsized quite a bit. And obviously that benefit you get from it is a much lighter bike. I think fully fueled just over 200 kilos, if I know. I don't have the specs memorized on this particular bike. Also have to say, because it is smaller, it feels like the handlebars are a bit, for road riding it's fine, but I'm standing in the foot pegs, it just seems like the handlebars should be a bit closer to me. Maybe it's just something to get used to, but it's, I don't know how to do this though. How do you do this? It's got to be weight adjusted, right? Is that fixed? The windscreen? It can't be, can it? Maybe it is fixed. That would be weird if it was a fixed windscreen. At the moment, I think it is fixed. It'd be nice if you could height adjust it a little bit. It is a nice bike. It rides really nice. The looks of it is something, you know, that's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. And there's got to be enough room to, you know, to mount luggage. Obviously, the luggage rack's much shorter than it is on the R and S model of the 1290. So everything is downsized, but you get a bike that's a lot lighter than the top class of the adventure bikes. Now let's look at the screen and how it is. It should be very similar to mine, I would think. The different ride modes. It looks very much like what I'm already used to. So there's a rain mode. There's even a rally mode in here. Interesting. Now that's cool. Let's put that in. Then you can change traction control, ABS, turn that off if you want. Turn to off-road. Oh, that's a bug. I'm gonna leave that on for now. It's got a quick shifter, it's turned on, I could tell that beforehand too. And yeah, all the typical settings. So it's exactly the same, it's just a bit smaller of a screen. I wish they made it a bit bigger if you use the larger screen, but it's very easy to read off. I wonder how you change the slip now. So I use the arrow up and down buttons to change the traction control in rally mode. So it's very much the same as it is on the 2021 1290 Super Adventure S and R models that have the rally mode, except they have dedicated buttons down here now, but you use the arrow up and down to set the slip, the amount of slip that you want for a rally mode. So nice to know that it works, and the rest is just the same thing. Let's ride it some more. Of course, this isn't keyless go. You still have a key for the ignition when you turn it on. I found this little forest road. So let's try it out. Really cool. Get to check out the suspension a little bit. I mean, this isn't really hardcore test. It's just a side road here. But let's try it out how this. It definitely moves around quite a bit under me. So my you know, it's a little sandy like this. Definitely can feel the front wheel moving a bit, so I'm going to push the weight back a little bit just to see how it is. There are like 80/20 tires mounted on here on this bike. And I don't know where this takes us. So the suspension's doing an okay job. I can definitely see that there's room for improvement on the R model to get the, even on stuff like this. It's totally fine to ride it, but you can tell it's nice to have a bit more. Very, very cool. I'm really surprised to find these roads here too. I have no idea where I am. Just have to check it out on the map actually. So just from the standing position, yeah, it feels like the handlebars are too low for me, so I'm not really comfortable on the bike right now. Maybe it just takes some getting used to. Maybe it's the way it's supposed to be, but it's different now for me at the moment. I would be comfortable with my R1290. Yeah, the moves under me, like, you know, when this gets sandy like this, there's a lot of movement on the bike. There would be less on mine, or maybe just because I haven't been in conditions like this for a while. Let's see, there's vehicles, so it's totally fine to drive here or ride here. Where it takes me. Now let's briefly talk about sound. Now this bike comes with an Akrapovic muffler, which is already an upgrade to the stock muffler that you get. And honestly, I didn't really notice right from the get-go when I was riding it. I was just walking around the bike and I noticed, oh, this is an Akrapovic on here. Well, this is a Euro 5 compliant motorcycle, so do not expect much from the sound department. It's definitely a step into a quieter bike. Of course, the emissions have been reduced again in Euro 5 compared to the previous Euro 4 models. And especially if I compare this bike with the Akrapovic to my bike, 1290 with the Akrapovic, the difference is day and night. You can barely notice the motor. I don't even know what it would actually sound like with the original stock muffler on it, but it's barely noticeable having the Akrapovic on here. And I guess that is due to the Euro 5 restriction. If you want to keep it street legal, that's the way it's going to go with the new bikes, I suppose, but it's a huge difference. And I like to get some acoustic feedback from the engine. It's kind of a shame. I don't think we need super loud motorcycles. I get why they need to be quieter, but some acoustic feedback is nice, and this bike, yeah, could use a little more, I guess. Test the brakes, there's no one here. It's slightly wet. Let's do a full brake. Almost a standstill. So it gives you an idea. Brakes are good. I mean, they absolutely will lock up the wheels. But there's quite a bit of nosedive to it. So let's talk about a few things that I noticed after riding this bike now for a little while. So first off, as with any motorcycle that you ride for the first time, it takes a little while to get used to the bike. For me, it was just getting used to a smaller size. Now just riding this for a good 2 hours now, it already feels like I've ridden it for quite a while now, and you know, it's not something that I think about when I ride the bike. Now the things that stood out for me, and it's going to be positive and negative things in general, and especially as compared to my 1290 Super Adventure R at the moment and the S model that I previously owned. First, I would think that absolutely surprised me in a positive way, and that is the engine of this motorcycle. I'm absolutely blown away how much fun it is to ride this motorcycle with this particular engine. Now, coming from a very powerful 1290 Super Adventure S and R model, 160 horsepower, 140 Newton meters, anything less than that I would think would feel like a weak motor, but not so with this particular bike. I'm impressed how much fun it is, how much power there is on this engine. I didn't really feel like it's lacking a lot. Now, of course, it helps that the bike is much lighter, so just the power to weight ratio, of course, is better when you have a lot less weight to carry around. But it's really easy to pass other cars. It's fun to accelerate on this bike. I'm really impressed. I thought you had to actually do a lot more compromises, sort of switching to a smaller motorcycle, especially with the power part, and that's not the case on this bike. Very, very cool. Another thing that I really like is the handling of the bike. It's nice for lower speed handling. It just handles much, much lighter than a bigger bike, and it has its advantages on slow speed handling and cornering into turns. But then on the downside, of course, a larger bike is a lot more steady, just the way it rides, you know, it's just more planted on the road. And it kind of brings me to a topic that is the suspension system on the bike. Now, if we're used to, especially the S model of the 1290, that is a huge difference, and that's a huge step down from the riding comfort the S model and even the R model gets you, but especially the S model with the semi-active suspension system for road riding, that is really hard to beat on the comfort end. And this is a noticeable step down if you go to the mid-range adventure bikes, is the comfort and how planted the bike feels on the road. This bike is just kind of jumping up and down a little bit. It just feels a little fidgety when it doesn't have to be. And that kind of extends a little bit to the off-road section as well. I mean, it can handle it quite well, and probably better than the larger bikes, the 1290, but still it feels there's room for improvement, especially on the suspension system. Now, I haven't ridden the R version of the 890 Adventure yet, and I'm sure that's going to be very, very different experience riding the R model. If it's anything close to stepping from an S to an R model on the 1290, then that would be a huge upgrade to this bike. But this particular one, you could probably get used to it, but like I said, it's a step down quite a bit. And it also brings me to the touring qualities of the bike. You can absolutely, with this power, the handling and the ride, you can absolutely do longer trips with this, but it would be at a different comfort level as compared to a larger adventure bike. And these bikes are meant to go long distance and travel a long time, because they just, you know, offer a steady ride, and they offer a lot more wind protection as well. Just overall, the bike is smaller, so it doesn't give you as much wind protection. Also, the windshield, it does a fine job in what it's supposed to do, and I'm sure there's upgrade options on the market that you can, you know, have a smaller or larger windshield. There's other stuff you can sort of accessorize later, but just stock, you know, straight from the dealer, it's of course a lot less wind protection, and the overall feel of the bike is less comfortable than having these large adventure bikes. So it doesn't matter so much for me if just riding a couple hours on the bike. But if I extrapolate that to an 8-hour, 10-hour riding day, at some point that's going to make a difference. And of course, that is the compromise you're making with, you know, going for a smaller bike. Now, another great thing is that you don't have to compromise on. It has pretty much the same electronic package that the larger bikes get when it comes to ABS traction controls. It has the same rally mode as the S model I was riding. So you can set it into rally mode and basically on the fly change the amount of traction control that you want. So all that stuff is available on these on the mid-size adventure bikes. I'm not sure about cornering ABS. I think it does have that, but I'm not 100% sure if this bike has cornering ABS. But even if it didn't, it has all the other stuff in there, and that basically means you have a state-of-the-art electronic package in a mid-size adventure bike, and that's really good. It's going to keep you safe, and that's really important on a bike like this. Next thing I want to talk about is the seat and the seating position, which I find to be nice, just sitting down and riding it. I think that's a good riding. It's a very upright riding position, and it feels more like you're sitting on the bike than in the bike. And even the 1290 almost feels like you're sitting on top of it when you compare it to a bike like the 1250 GS, where you really sit inside the motorcycle. So even comparing it to those two, it feels even more like you're sitting on top of the bike, which isn't really a bad thing. It's just something you notice when you first step on the bike. I think the seat is a little bit too hard for me. I would probably get something on the power parts and get something that is a bit more comfortable, as I did on the S model for the 1290 when I had the bike. That was one of the first things that I got, is a more comfortable seat. But there's plenty of options out there so you can accessorize the bike. But overall, the width of the seat is great. And yeah, if it was a bit softer, I can totally see myself sitting on this bike for quite some time and riding it the whole day. Now let's talk about the looks of the bike. I didn't start with that on purpose, but I know there's very split opinions on how good or bad the bike looks. Honestly, I don't think it is the prettiest bike out there. The split tank really helps with the handling, as it did on all the other bikes, on the 790, now on the new 2021 1290 Super Adventure S and R models. It really helps, but of course it doesn't really look that great, especially on the orange model here. Yeah, I don't really like it. Now, things you can do to it, if you look at the R or the rally model that comes out, there's a lot you can do with just like graphics and stickers, and so integrate it visually more into the bike. So, you know, just buying it stock like this, I think I would make a few changes to it just to make it look better. But there's certainly bikes that look a lot better than this one, just straight from the showroom floor, that's for sure. Another thing worth mentioning is actually the quick shifter is also something that I've gotten really used to after having it for the very first time on my BMW. It was actually the 1200 GS where I first had a quick shifter, which didn't work so well. The quick shifter on the S model and the R model of the 1290 works flawlessly. It's really, really nice. I know there's quick shifters out there that work even better than that, but it's really, really good. If I have to compare it to this one is almost as good on the 890. It's not quite there yet. There's still parts where it's a bit fidgety to get the gears in. Maybe it just takes some time to get used to it. But just from riding it for 2 hours, I'd say the quick shifter is a little better on the 1290. It works a little better with up and down shift. But compared to BMW, this is still light years ahead. The BMW quick shifters are still not very good on the GS models. That'll be the day when they fix that. Anyway, check out this view. It's beautiful here. This is the Berlin-See. This is north of Berlin, not too far from the dealership where I picked up this bike. And yeah, we're in the middle of the week, so there's very little traffic here. The only people that you see here all the time is divers, scuba divers for some reason. And there's a very popular spot here where there's tons of scuba divers. And yeah, I'm about to pass it. Oh, it's one of them here. There's some scuba divers right here, and that's usually where I park, and that's where I hop in the water. So how does this 890 Adventure compare to the bigger brothers and sisters, the 1290? Well, the 1290 models are definitely geared towards long distance touring travel, and that's quite apparent when you sit down on one of these. You can go long distance, you can travel with it, but it will be with less comfort as compared to a bigger bike. For that, you get a much lighter motorcycle, which when you take it off road and take it off the pavement, this is basically where the bike that shines. Having a lot less kilograms to carry around will allow you to go places that the 1290 will not take you, given the same riding skills. So that's a huge advantage of these bikes, just having something that's a bit more compact and a lot lighter to deal with. Also, just from the ride modes, you can see this bike doesn't come with a sport mode. The 1290 has a sport mode, so it kind of gives an indication of what it's geared to. You can certainly take the 1290 to a track and have a very good day. You probably wouldn't necessarily do that with the 890, even though you could, of course, to do a training. But this wouldn't be the first choice. This is not the bike that you think of taking to a track with the power it has. But I'm sure it would be fun to ride this one too on the track. There's a lot more like creature comfort. A lot of the stuff is in here with cruise control and all the electronics are all there. But it's little things like this one doesn't have any hydraulic clutch, so the feel on the clutch on the 1290 is quite a bit nicer. It takes very, very little effort. It doesn't take much here, but it's just nicer to have the hydraulic clutch and just kind of get the feather the clutch in. It's much easier to do than on this bike. There's little things that you have to compromise on this motorcycle when it comes to these things, but considering all the things that are in the bike, it's quite amazing actually. So the big question is, would I consider switching from a 1290 to an 890? And the clear answer at the moment is no, I would not, especially after I've ridden this one here. I think sometime down the road there's actually an option, and that really kind of depends on the kind of riding you do and the kind of riding that I am doing at the moment. I'm still spending the majority of the time on paved roads, where the advantages of having a larger bike definitely outshine this bike here. And there's only, a handful of color mods that I get to ride off-road. And I know the big heavy weight of the 1290 isn't an advantage, but considering the things that you can do with it, I'm actually quite surprised how much more this opens up the world of motorcycle riding, of just riding a 1290 off-road. But of course, with this smaller bike, if off-road riding is a much larger proportion of what you're doing, this almost becomes the obvious choice, because it does handle really well on the road. You can take twisties probably pretty fast, and when it comes to long distance touring comfort, there's a lot of things you can still do with aftermarket products to improve that on this end. So there's absolutely a place for it. And I haven't really done a proper off-road test with this one, and I hope to get to do this one of these days with the 890 Super Adventure R model, hopefully in Enduro Action Team Park, to just kind of see how that handles. This is primarily a road test with some gravel road tests. But as summary, I have to say I'm very impressed with the bike. I didn't really expect a whole lot coming from the 1290, and I was pleasantly surprised how much fun it actually is to ride this bike. So anyway guys, if you found this useful, give me a thumbs up. If you have comments, please leave them in the comment section. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, ride safe and stay awesome. Well guys, it started to rain. So I'm gonna make my way back to the dealership, drop the bike off, see how far they've got with mine, and call it a day.
Take me back, back, back.